Would you dare to live in a place where the weather can change in just a few minutes? Where flights can be delayed without warning? Where fishing boats have to turn back? And where an ordinary day suddenly becomes a negotiation with the sea? There is an archipelago in the North Atlantic, where small villages sit beneath steep cliffs, where sheep walk along wet, windswept slopes, and where people have had to dig tunnels through the mountains and beneath the sea floor just to connect their tiny communities to one another. For visitors, this place looks like a perfect Nordic painting. Grass-roofed houses, waterfalls dropping straight into the ocean, empty roads winding through green valleys, and fog wrapped around towering cliffs. But for the people who live here, that beauty is also a daily challenge. The cold sea decides their work, the wind decides their travel. The price of goods depends on shipments arriving from far away, and the future of many families is still tied to fish, to the harbor, and to the weather. So what do people live on between these small islands? How do children get to school when mountains, sea, and tunnels separate one village from the next? And what happens when a place that was once remote and quiet suddenly becomes the dream of travelers from all over the world? This is the Faroe Islands. And the real question is not how beautiful this place is. The real question is how people have lived, how they have adapted, and how they have held on to what matters. In one of Denmark's most demanding island regions, from the outside, the Faroe Islands are easy to mistake for a place built simply to please a camera. Cliffs dropping straight into the sea, empty roads cutting through green valleys, grass-roofed houses sitting quietly under a layer of fog, and sheep appearing on almost every slope. But the Faroes are not just a beautiful landscape on the edge of northern Europe. This is a place where people are born and grow up, where they go to school, work, and raise families, where they care for the elderly, wait for cargo ships, watch the wind forecast, and repair their roofs after heavy rain. A place where people decide their futures, inside a small community in the middle of the ocean. Behind those peaceful images is a much harder story. How do you live a modern life in a place where the sea still controls most of what you do? And how do you hold on to your identity while the outside world keeps moving closer? So the question of this journey is not how beautiful the Faroe Islands are. The real question is how the people here have lived, between wind and fish, between stone and fog, and the long quiet of isolation. The Faroe Islands sit in a position that can make them feel like they don't quite belong to continental Europe. And yet, they are not entirely cut off from it either. On a map, the archipelago lies between Scotland and Iceland, in the cold waters of the North Atlantic, where the nearest mainland is not something you can see from the horizon. This is not the Denmark many people picture. Flat, urban, with smooth roads running through open farmland. The Faroes are a different Denmark, a land of steep mountains and narrow fjords, of vertical cliffs and wet, wind-blown pastures, and small villages tucked under the mountainsides, as if trying to shelter from the strength of the sea. Isolation here does not come from a great distance on a map. It comes from the way nature sets the terms for every kind of movement. To reach the Faroes, people usually fly into Vágar Airport, then travel by mountain road, bridge, ferry, or tunnel to reach the other islands. Some communities have been brought closer together by modern infrastructure. But even with undersea tunnels, the feeling of living among islands does not disappear. In the Faroes, a short trip can become a long journey, through fog, through sideways rain, through narrow roads and mountain stretches that leave little room for error. Some villages look close on a map, but in real life, they are separated by deep bays and steep cliffs, by the weather and the rhythm of ferry schedules. That shapes everything. Goods have to arrive by ship and by truck, through ports and through tunnels, on transport routes that always depend on the sea. Imported food can cost more. Going to see a doctor, attending school, going to work, or visiting family on another island. All of it has to be planned around the weather and the schedule. A family here cannot live as if everything is always available, just around the corner. But that difficult geography is also what gives the Faroes their character. People here learn to prepare in advance. They learn never to take the weather forecast lightly, and they learn to accept that sometimes the sea, the wind, and the fog are the ones making the final decision. Distance in the Faroes is not only measured in miles, it is measured in ferries, in undersea tunnels, in stormy days, in late shipments, and in the quiet understanding that to live here, you have to know exactly where you are standing. In the Faroe Islands, nature does not stand still outside the frame. It steps into daily life. It taps on the window. It pulls clouds down across the mountain slopes. It pushes waves into the cliffs. And it reminds people that this land has never been easy to control. Wind is the most familiar sound. It does not only stir the grass on the rooftops or turn the sea silver gray, it decides whether a boat can go out today, whether a ferry can run on schedule, whether a plane can land at Vagar, or whether it has to wait. In many other places, weather is something to complain about. In the Faroes, weather is something to respect. Rain and fog are also part of the rhythm of life. Some mornings, an entire village seems to disappear into low cloud. A road that was clear a moment ago can be quickly covered by a cold white veil. The cliffs that look so beautiful in travel photos are also, in real life, reminders of limits. Walking, driving, herding sheep, going to the harbor, or working outdoors, all of it requires care. The sea is the largest character in the Faroes. It feeds the community with fish, with the harbor, with the fishing and aquaculture industries. But the sea also reserves the right to say no. When the waves rise, plans have to change. When the wind builds, people have to wait. A family living on an island here understands one thing. The sea will not allow them to do what they want every single day. That is why houses in the Faroes are not built only to be beautiful. They have to hold up against rain, wind, and humidity. Clothing is not only made for warmth, it is made to resist the water, to resist the wind, to resist a cold that cuts through the body when you stand by the ocean too long. Traditional meals carry the marks of the environment too. Fish, lamb, and methods of preserving food. From a time when isolation forced people to think carefully about the season ahead. But nature in the Faroes is not only a threat, it also shapes how people see the world. Living between mountains and sea teaches a person that being small does not mean being weak. A small community can endure if it learns to listen to where it lives, if it learns to prepare, to wait, to share, and never to take a peaceful day for granted. In the Faroes, nature is not a backdrop to human life. It is a demanding neighbor, a source of livelihood, a test, and sometimes the answer to why the people here become so deeply attached to every cliff, to every harbor, and to every gust of wind that passes across the roof of a home. The history of the Faroe Islands did not begin with travel photographs. It began with a very practical question. How could people live on a chain of rocky islands, with few trees, with heavy winds, and with a cold, unpredictable sea on every side? From very early on, Nordic settlers came here. They brought their language, their habits of seafaring, the raising of sheep, the building of homes, the telling of stories, and the organization of small village communities. On a land that did not offer many easy resources, they had to learn to live with what the islands would allow. Fish in the sea, sheep in the pastures, seabirds along the cliffs, and methods of preserving food for the long, harsh seasons ahead. Over many centuries, the Faroes were drawn into larger political ties, first with Norway, then with Denmark. But the distance of the archipelago meant that life here never fully mirrored the centers of power on the mainland. The Faroese kept their own language, their own memory, and the sense that they belonged to an island world that moved by its own rhythm. Today, the marks of that history do not only live in books, they live in the Faroese language still spoken on the street, in the grass-roofed houses, in the fishing harbors, in the dried foods hung through the cold, windy season, and in the quiet pride of a small community that has, again and again, had to rely on itself. History in the Faroes is not a past that has ended. It still appears every time a boat leaves the harbor, every time a family prepares food for the season ahead, and every time the people here choose to keep living on the islands their ancestors once learned to call home. An ordinary day in the Faroes does not begin with the noise of a big city. It usually begins with the sound of wind hitting the window, rain sweeping across the roof, a car passing along a narrow road, and in many coastal villages, the sound of the harbor coming alive before the sun has fully risen. In a house looking out at the bay, a family might start the morning by checking the weather, even before checking the news, not out of curiosity, but because the weather decides nearly every plan. Children may get to school by bus or by family car, along roads that link village to village, island to island. In more distant places, traveling is not only a question of distance, it is a question of ferry schedules, of tunnels, of strong winds, and of the mood of the sea. Adults go to work in many different ways. Some head down to the harbor, preparing for a day around fish, boats, cold storage, or processing plants. Others work in salmon farming, in services, or in construction, in transport, in schools, or in offices, in hospitals, or in modern roles based in Torshav. The Faroes are small, but they are not outside the global economy. A box of fish leaving a harbor here can become an export shipment, one that travels far beyond the small village where it began. Family life also carries the marks of isolation. Food is not always cheap. Many things have to cross the sea, pass through the port, and move through the shipping system before reaching the supermarket. People still buy milk, bread, and vegetables, clothing, medicine, and household goods, just as they would in any modern place. But in the Faroes, the feeling that everything is always available is not as strong as in a large city. A spell of bad weather, a disruption in shipping, or a change in the supply chain. It is enough to remind people that this archipelago still sits in the middle of the ocean. That is why homes here are not only places to live, they are shelters against wind, rain, and humidity. A solid roof, a strong door, a heating system, electricity, hot water, internet, all of it becomes essential. The internet allows young people to study, to work, and to stay in touch with the wider world. But beyond the screen, they are still living in a small community, a place where people recognize one another at the supermarket, at the harbor, at school, or at a local football match. Healthcare is another part of life that feels different on the islands. The Faroes have hospitals, doctors, emergency services, and a healthcare system for their residents. But in an island community, serious illnesses, specialist care, complicated births, or emergencies all bring people back to the same realization: how much connection matters between one island and another, between the Faroes and Denmark, and between a family and the community around them. By the end of the day, the boats return to the harbor. The lights come on inside small houses, and the fog begins to slide down the mountain slopes. The Faroes return to the quiet that visitors find so captivating. But for the people who live here, that quiet is not a perfect frame. It is the result of many small things done throughout the day. Taking children to school, driving to work through a tunnel, waiting on a shipment, preparing dinner, checking the forecast, caring for the family, and continuing to live in a place where every ordinary thing In the Faroes, culture is not something that only appears in festivals or museums. It lives in the way people speak, in the way they name each village, in family meals, in the wool sweaters worn through cold, windy days, and in the feeling that a small community in the middle of the ocean has to keep a shared memory or risk being swallowed up by the wider world. The Faroese language is a deep part of that feeling. It is not only a tool for communication, it is proof that the Faroese have held on to a thread connecting them to their Nordic past. When a child learns Faroese at school, when an elder tells a story in their mother tongue, when the names of mountains, bays, and small villages are still spoken in the local way, culture stops being an abstract idea. It becomes the way people recognize home. Music and storytelling also hold a special place. In the tradition of chain dance, people hold hands in a circle. They step to a simple rhythm, and they sing long ballads passed down through many generations. What is striking is that this dance does not need a large stage. It does not need modern lighting. It does not need an audience of strangers. It needs a community willing to step together, to sing together, and to remember together. In a place once divided by sea, mountains, and long winters, standing together in a circle is perhaps not only an art form, it is an image of belonging. Faroese food also tells the story of the environment. Fish, lamb, dried, fermented, or carefully preserved foods. To outsiders, they are not only unusual flavors. They were born out of real necessity. How do you keep food when the weather turns bad? When the cargo ship does not come? When winter stretches on and the land cannot provide everything a person needs? A traditional meal here does not only sit on the table, it carries the memory of preparation, of careful saving, of adapting to what the land and sea would allow. The grass-roofed houses, the thick wool sweaters, the small churches, the fishing harbors, the village roads. They are not decorative details for a postcard. They are the result of many generations living with rain, wind, and humidity, with a cold sea, and with isolation. For visitors, the identity of the Faroes can show itself in just a few short days. But for the people who live here, it is something they carry every day, in their language, in their work, in their meals, in the way they remember their ancestors, and in the quiet question of how to step into the modern world without losing the feeling of being Faroese. In the Faroes, the economy does not begin with large shopping streets or wide fields. It begins with the sea. Every morning, when the boats leave the harbor, they carry more than nets, fuel, and men accustomed to the cold wind. They carry part of the foundation of the entire archipelago. Fish is not just food on a plate. Fish is work at the harbor, shifts in the processing plant, cold containers leaving the port, the household bill of a family, wages, taxes, schools, hospitals, and the reason a small community in the middle of the Atlantic can stay connected to the global market. Fishing and aquaculture are the material heart of the Faroes. Species caught in the open sea, alongside salmon farmed in cold coastal bays, have carried the name of the Faroes far, much farther than the size of the islands might suggest. From small harbors tucked under mountainsides, seafood is exported to markets across the world. That creates a very particular paradox. A place that looks distant, sparsely populated, often covered in fog, and yet deeply connected to international trade. But to live by the sea is also to depend on it. When the weather turns bad, work can stop. When fish stocks shift, when seafood prices move, when environmental rules change, when export markets change, the impact does not only sit inside an economic report. It moves directly into the lives of workers, into families living near the harbor, and into the quiet decisions young people are making about whether to stay in the marine industry or look for another path. Beyond fish, the Faroes are also growing into other industries: services and construction, transport, education and healthcare, technology and tourism. Tourism brings more restaurants, hotels, and tours, guiding work and car rentals, and the chance for young people to see that their home holds real value in the eyes of the world. But tourism does not replace the sea. It adds new options, and it also adds new pressure on housing, on village roads, on prices, and on places that were once very quiet. The cost of living in the Faroes is also part of the economic story. Many goods have to be imported, passing through the sea, through the ports, and through the distribution system before reaching the shopper, in a place with little farmland, limited agriculture, and weather that rarely cooperates. Every item on a supermarket shelf carries a longer journey than visitors might imagine. So when you look at a harbor in the Faroes, you are not only looking at fishing boats, you are looking at how a small society survives, by depending on the sea, by selling its products to the world, by keeping work within the community, and by trying to build enough of a future where the next generation will not have to leave, simply because home felt too small. The Faroes today are no longer an archipelago cut off from the world. Planes can bring residents and visitors to Vagar. Undersea tunnels have brought the islands closer to one another. Ferries, buses, trucks, ports, and the internet have brought modern life into every small village. A young person in the Faroes can study online, watch the same film as a friend in Copenhagen, order things from abroad, or talk with a relative living in another country. But connection in the Faroes always has one very clear limit. It has to pass through the geography. Goods do not appear on a supermarket shelf by themselves. They arrive by ship, by container, by truck moving through the port and the tunnel. A jacket, a piece of electronics, a medicine, a piece of fresh fruit. Before any of it reaches the customer, it has already traveled a far longer route than it would on the mainland. The same is true for education and work. The Faroes have schools, jobs, and modern services, but for some specialized fields, young people may still need to leave the islands, to study further, to find bigger opportunities, or simply to experience a different kind of life. beyond the horizon. When they leave, they take with them the Faroese language, the memory of the village, the smell of the cold sea, and the feeling of belonging to a very small place. When they return, they bring new skills, new ideas, and sometimes a difficult question. How do you modernize a homeland without turning it into a copy of somewhere else? The internet has brought the world into every home, but it has also made the younger generation more aware of the choices that exist outside the islands. The tunnels have brought villages closer together, but they have also made the pace of change faster. Tourism brings visitors, money, and attention, but it also brings the gaze of the world into places that once belonged only to the local community. So, connection in the Faroes is not just infrastructure, it is a quiet negotiation, opening up enough to live better, but not opening so much that the islands lose the quiet, the language, and the way of life that have kept them whole through many generations. But the Faroes today do not only face wind, rain, and a cold sea. The hardest challenges of these islands do not always come from nature. They come from a question: how can a small community step into the modern world without losing the very things that allowed it to survive in the first place? The first tension lies inside the marine economy itself. Fish has fed the Faroes for many generations, but depending so heavily on a single sector also leaves the islands exposed. If seafood markets shift, if export prices drop, if the marine environment comes under pressure, if international regulations become stricter, the impact does not stay inside an economic chart. It moves into the fishing harbor, into the processing plant, into the salmon pens, into the wages of workers, and into the future of families that live by the sea. The second tension is the younger generation. The Faroes have schools, internet, modern infrastructure, and a fairly stable society. But for young people who want to study specialized fields, to work in creative industries, technology, or research, or simply to find a wider life, the outside world is always close at hand through the screen. Staying means keeping the homeland, the language, the family. Leaving means opportunity, freedom, more options. In a small community, every young person who leaves the islands is not only an individual moving away, they are also an empty seat in a classroom, a missing colleague at work, a gap in a family, and a shift in the future of the population. The third tension is tourism. The Faroes were once a place that only the truly curious traveler found. But social media has turned the waterfalls, the cliffs, the small villages, and the winding mountain roads into a dream image for many visitors. Tourism brings money, jobs, restaurants, and hotels, and a sense of pride that the world has finally noticed the beauty of these islands. But it also brings pressure on hiking trails, on parking areas, on housing, on prices, on the privacy of small villages. A place can be beautiful because it is quiet, but when too many people come searching for that quiet, the quiet itself begins to disappear. And there is one more sensitive tension: the tradition of the pilot whale hunt, known as Grindadrap. For many Faroese, it is part of community memory, tied to the history of survival, of shared food, and of life with the sea. But for many people outside the islands, it is a deeply shocking image, hard to accept, and it has become a symbol of conflict between local tradition and modern views on animals. To write about the Faroes and avoid this story completely would leave the picture incomplete. But to look at it only with outrage would also miss something: the way the Faroese themselves understand their history and their right to make their own choices. So the Faroes are not a fairy tale archipelago standing outside of time. They are a society working through very modern questions. How much development is enough? How much openness is safe? How much tradition makes sense to keep? And how can the next generation still want to call these cold, windswept islands home? Perhaps, to understand the Faroes, you should not only look at the cliffs, the tunnels, or the boats returning to harbor. You have to look at the moment at the end of the day, when the wind still passes over the small rooftops, when lights begin to appear in the windows, and when a village rests quietly between the mountains and the sea, as if it has been there for a very long time, no matter how much the world outside has changed. Staying in the Faroes is not always an easy choice. Staying means accepting unpredictable weather, higher costs, long distances, fewer options than large cities offer. Staying means understanding that a trip, a delivery, a job, even a family plan, it may still have to bend to the sea and the wind. But for many people, the Faroes are not only where they live, they are where you learn to read the sky before leaving the house, where you know the names of the mountains around your village, where the smell of fish, of rain, of wet grass, and the sound of seabirds become part of memory, where grandparents once lived, where parents once worked, where children once ran along the small roads, and where family stories have been kept alive through meals, through language, through season after cold, windy season. Those who leave may find wider opportunities, but many still remember the feeling of coming back. When the plane drops down through low cloud, when the road leads past a familiar bay, when the small rooftops appear along the side of the mountain, and when they realize that some places do not hold on to their people through ease, they hold on through memory. The Faroes continue to exist, not because life here is simple. They exist because, across many generations, the people here have learned how to turn a demanding land into a home. When the last light falls across the small rooftops of the Faroes, the archipelago no longer looks like a perfect travel photograph. It returns to being itself, a place where the wind passes over the cliffs, where fishing boats sit out in the harbor, where children walk home after school, where families prepare dinner to the sound of rain tapping against the window. The Faroes remind us that a distant place is not necessarily a place left behind. Sometimes, distance itself is what forces people to understand more clearly who they are, how much they need one another, and what is truly worth holding on to when the world around them is changing far too quickly. Life here is not easy, but perhaps what makes the Faroes special is not that people have managed to conquer nature. It is the way they have learned to live alongside it, day by day, season by season, generation by generation. If you want to keep exploring places that are distant, demanding, and rarely told on screen, stay with us for the journeys ahead.